Hello everyone, and I've been playing a lot of a game recently called Atelier Rorona. This is a game where you play as an alchemist, where you literally have to run an alchemist store, creating potions and all other sorts of ingredients that people demand. It's a very simple game in theory, it's fairly easy, but it's a very relaxing game with a very fun and interesting story that isn't too complicated, nor is it too simple. Like I said, you play as an alchemist, and your workshop is under threat of closing down. So every 3 months, roughly, you need to fulfill so many assignments. These assignments are to create particular items that is requested of you by the palace. And these can range from, they're all set in stone, but they're very simple things. It's like make X amount of this item, such as a barrel or maybe bombs that could be used for the kingdom in the game. And you can create these items on the side, and the more that you do, the more results you gain. If you don't do well enough, your workshop will close down and you'll get a bad ending. But on top of all of this, you actually have to run the workshop and actually, as I said, manage your deadlines. So you may have to create, let's say, bombs for the kingdom, which is easy enough to gather the ingredients, but you also then have to fulfill requests for people who want items from your workshop. This could be something as simple as perhaps making pies, or perhaps creating ice bombs or other trinkets and other items that the town might be useful, and you get paid for each of these. Some of them are like even create food items like soup or drinks, or even to create iron to help manufacture more weapons or armor. There's a lot of requests you can do aside from these, such as bounty hunts, where you literally will have to go out into the wild and fight things. Or you may have to do friendship requests for people you've met, which can raise their friendship level, and you might get new events or a different ending. And there's, I think off the top of my head, about 9 or 10 characters in the game, and each of them, most of them you can bring with you into the field. So I'll move on to that shortly. But the making items part of the game starts off and it looks very complicated. You might sit there and think this looks, overwhelming, but it's actually relatively simple. Basically what happens is you may want to create, let's say, a pie, because I think I know the recipe off the top of my head, which is like flour, water, and I think another item. And a lot of these items can be substituted if you have a substitute item for them. Like down the line, you might need to create an item that requires a material from a beast. And you can slay any beast and use that material in its place. And when you go out into the wild, it takes a number of days. So, like I said, you have 3 months. And the thing with this 3 months thing is that every action you do takes up time. So despite 3 months seeming like a lot of time, traveling from one part of the map to the other might take a lot of effort. So traveling from your kingdom to, let's say, the nearby forest, which is actually an area in the game, takes 1 day. But every area that you go through the forest takes additional days, as does when you create items. So it sounds like you really need to manage your time effectively. It isn't that bad, really, because you have so much time, and it isn't too much pressure put on you in this, to go out and find items. But there is a time in the game, and you do have to, at the very least, make sure that your deadlines are accomplished, and make sure that you're fulfilling requests for people, and you need to make sure that your workshop is stocked with ingredients to accommodate their requests. Or additionally, you could just go out into the store and sell some of your items that you don't need, or buy items from the various stores in the game, which there are like 3 or 4 of. One of my favorite features about the game, and I absolutely love it, is the amount of characters and how unique they all are. You have the main character, Rorona, who is, like I said, an apprenticed alchemist, and her entire thing is she's very laid back, and she's kind of shy and kind of naive and a bit clumsy, and it really shows through her dialogue and the music that's played throughout the game around her. But you've got other characters then who are a little bit more like arrogant, or like boisterous, or a bit like annoyed at certain traits they have, and you can see all of these for the characters. Your master, Astrid, for example, is like really arrogant and stuff, but you can really see that she means well, and she knows what she's talking about. Or you've got your one of your friends, Cordelia, who is known as Corey, who is really insecure about her height, and you can see that her getting particularly annoyed when people make comments on her height, and she seems to like overcompensate for this in lots of ways by being like a little high, like acting like she's bigger and higher than everybody, when in actuality she's like the shortest character in the game. And a lot of characters in the game might make jokes about her, and it's pretty funny because it's not exactly like the humor in the game is more like teen-based humor. So everybody can enjoy it. You could be young and you could enjoy it, or you could be like an adult and you could still get some references that isn't exactly, that some younger people might not pick up on. And all of the characters you encounter, well, at least most of them can be recruited. Now, the interesting thing about it is that not only do you need to manage money for your shop in order to buy items and buy new equipment and stuff, which you can also create, but every character you hire, with the exception of Cordelia, I believe, each of them have a cost to hire. So let's say you hire 2 characters, you don't hire Cordelia, and you hire 2 others. They all actually have a price that you need to pay for. Once you finish your mission, finish your quest for them. So the total cost could be 500 coal, which is the gold in the game. And that actually is pretty important to remember, because at the start, like, you don't have a lot of money, and you need to manage your workshop pretty effectively at the start, and you need money to obviously buy ingredients. So the cost of hiring something is something to consider. But that being said, the combat is not particularly difficult. The combat is your typical JRPG. It's a turn-based thing. Your team are always skewed to win, basically. The victory is skewed in your favor. With the exception of very particular encounters, such as boss fights. Most of the fights you encounter will be against very small, easy-to-defeat enemies, and once you defeat them, you gain items, and you can defeat your enemies by either using traditional attacks, or by defending, or by using special abilities or magic that the character might have. There are particular attacks later on when you reach 50, I think, or a high level, where you can have like a super attack which builds up over time. And if anybody attacks the main party leader, Rorona, the party members on the side can take the hit for her, because I believe if she's defeated, the entire thing ends. The boss fights in the game are pretty difficult too. As I said before, you have assignments to fulfill and all these other requests. Some of the requests that you get later on will be about hunting and defeating certain monsters. They're called bounty hunts. One of the harder things is that you may be tasked with defeating a creature, a boss. Oh, and before I forget, alongside your assignment, you've also got optional goals, which, if these are accomplished, this might even be down to turning or creating a certain amount of items, or making an item of a certain quality. And yes, each item has a particular level of quality, depending how good it is. So you could use your poor ingredients to create a poor item to fulfill a request, or your best ingredients to fulfill a request that's required to have a particular level of quality. But a lot of them, you go out and you may need to defeat, let's say, 10 wolves or 12 of vultures or something. And each time you do one of these, you fill a bingo card, and it's a 3x3 card that when you fill a row, either horizontally, vertically, or diagonally, you unlock an item, with the middle piece of the bingo card being only stamped once you fulfill your actual assignment. But anyway, the boss fights in the game are obviously a lot more challenging than your normal fights. All of the boss fights in the game are completely optional. You could even go as far to argue the majority of the fights you encounter are optional as well, but you probably need to defeat things to get certain items. I'm not so sure, but the fighting is fairly simple. It doesn't require very much tactical thinking. It doesn't require much power leveling, so to speak. It's fairly straightforward and very enjoyable for anybody who wants something that's very simple, yet slightly deep in the sense of it requires a lot of attention to do. To fully level up a character, for example, you do need to dedicate yourself to fighting. A lot of the boss fights require some level of preparation. There's also a lot of dogs barking outside. There's a lot of events in the game as well. These are fulfilling certain things, or they're just events that happen as you play the game. For example, if you raise somebody's friendship level a lot, which is done by fulfilling their requests, you will potentially even change the ending, or you'll see more events for them. And as you're walking around town, if you decide to fast travel, which I used a lot of, you can actually see each part of the town where the characters are, and you know that if you go there, if there's their face next to it, you trigger an event. And these events are usually just comedic in nature, or just give you a little bit more information about the character. But nonetheless, they're interesting to look at. Some of them are particularly funny, and I especially love seeing the characteristics of all the characters involved, and all of the best parts about them. Like, again, like, Rorona's really laid back and shy, and a lot of people force her to do all of these tasks she doesn't really want to do. Like, every year there's a festival, and you can choose to participate in the festival. And during the first festival, you're like, oh, okay, there's this cabbage picking thing, and you literally get forced into it, and your character's like, I don't want to be in this. And then when you win it, you get like this really silly title, and Rorona's like, I don't want to be called that, and everybody's calling her it anyway, and it's pretty funny just to see her emotes, just like, you know, like this one where she's like hunched over slightly and looks like she's crying. Like, it's pretty cute. The game has a lot of endings too. I believe that there are 4 or 5 endings, depending on how high your popularity is, which is filled from doing requests, and how many stars you get on your assignments, which ranges from 1 to 10, I believe. And depending on how many of those stars you get in your assignments, and depending on how well your popularity is, affects the ending. So you could have a very popular store, but very poor. You could do very poor in your assignments. That'll give you an ending, or you could do vice versa, and you get a different ending. And there are different layers of endings. There's like I said, there's 4. But on top of that, there's also generic character endings. So if you have your friendship level at a certain level, and you've done so many things with each character, you can have additional endings on the end. And there's also like some secret endings too, which are pretty funny, like get a lot of money and stuff. I talk about these because there's just so many in the game that I don't even know all of them, and these are just a few that I've seen myself. The game, of course, being having multiple endings and multiple assignments to fulfill, and different ways of playing it, makes the game have a lot of replay value. I will say, though, that one of the downsides of the game is that because nothing really changes in terms of how the game plays, you literally just go from making items to fighting bosses, which are all fairly simple. The game can feel a bit repetitive, and because it's very long as well, and there's no real like overarching story that changes rapidly throughout the game. It's a fairly simple story where it's like, basically, I'm getting better at doing my job, and there's no overarching villain, so to speak. There is a bad guy, but he's not appearing very much. That it might deter some people, so you may need to play it in short bursts. But nonetheless, the game is fairly long. I believe it took me about 25 hours to finish one playthrough, so I can only imagine completionists and people who especially enjoy the game will play a lot, especially if you want to see all the events, which can be seen in the main menu as well. There's a lot of abilities in the game for each character as well, which you get from leveling up, which, you know, you may want to see that through playing the game multiple times. You probably can't see them all. And the another downside that I just thought of was that when I actually wanted to check all the trophies, which I do, I mean, everybody checks trophies / achievements for most games, they're all in Japanese. This is probably a glitch that'll be fixed later, but I was like, huh, okay, I don't know, like, because I use them as like sort of like an idea of what videos to make, and they're all in Japanese right now, so I'm probably going to have to get a translation guide. That being said, they're probably the same as the ones on the PS3. Is there anything else I ever mentioned? The video's been going on for about 14 minutes. Oh yeah, one other thing. Halfway through the game as well, just a mild spoiler, I guess, you actually get run in the store too. And I believe there's a New Game Plus as well. So, I'm not so sure what I'll exactly be able to do, given that it's a few years old. I am very excited to play the next one, which I believe is Tutori, but I'm not entirely sure if that's the next one. But, you know, I guess I'll be playing soon, so I'll figure it out. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this review. I hope you sat through my rambling. And I hope that you might try and consider playing the game yourself. It's a very fun franchise, and I think that with a bit more attention, it might be something that everybody can enjoy. I'll see you about.